Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Superstars of Wrestling review series. This particular episode is for the 20th of February, 1992, 93. I almost said 2003. Anyway, we're moving closer to WrestleMania. We're moving closer to what many people consider to be one of the worst WrestleManias of all time. And that, of course, is WrestleMania 9. And I mean, at the time, it probably was. I mean, the adult scandal and the steroid scandal and all of that still going around at the time. Bam Bam Bigelow and Earthquake square off. They both do really short 15-second promos, threatening to take the other out. And we kind of move forward into what ends up being a pretty impressive match by the time. And, you know, but that ends up being a little bit later in the program. Razor Ramon opens with Buddy Wayne. Buddy Wayne, of course, a major enhancement talent or key enhancement talent, teaching Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 and now Wrestling Observer, among others in the Pacific Northwest, to wrestle. But here, he's managing to do a bunch of, pretty impressive stuff. Kick by Ramon, Beal across the ring, Razor with the duck of the clothesline, the overhead slam, and then he actually hits a second rope overhead fall-away slam. Razor getting a little more aggressive here off the Royal Rumble thing. Odd that he only gets a Bob Backlund match at WrestleMania 9. Just odd to me to go from challenging for the championship to, beating Bob Backlund at WrestleMania 9. Razor's Edge, though, finishes this particular match. Mean Gene gives an update on Brutus Beefcake. We see his return to the ring and the, triumphant return of the Barber, which doesn't go nearly as well as is expected. Jimmy Hart, obviously, stands in front of Beefcake before Hart gets thrown out of the way, thus necessitating Hart's baby face turn, and they do the X over the screen as Brutus is busted open and laid out. This will set up Hogan's return for WrestleMania 9, Hogan and Beefcake. I think they do the Mega Maniacs thing, maybe? Or the Hulkamaniacs. Against DiBiase and IRS, otherwise known as Money Incorporated, for the tag team titles here in WrestleMania 9. That gives Hogan also a reason to defeat Yokozuna the same day, but that's a whole different story, which we'll talk about more in April and all of that. Anyway, Mr. Perfect against Bobby Young. Bobby Young, a relatively new enhancement talent. Nothing intense to write home about, of course. Hennig, a babyface here, he does all of his major spots, drop kicks, inverted neck snaps, the perfect plex, and the like. He's going into a match with Luger at WrestleMania, which I think is announced within a week or two here. Keep in mind, we are just about 6 weeks away, 5 to 6 weeks away from WrestleMania, which it's amazing to me that in 6 weeks they can build a pay-per-view that people care about. In 1993, they couldn't do it in 3 months now. Not that they could have an angle that lasts 3 months for the most part. I mean, they do, upon occasion, have angles that last 3-4 months. Drew and Orton comes to mind. Seth Rollins and Ray is probably at that level now. But something that lasts 6 months to a year, much, much harder. Then we go to the event center, still plugging WrestleMania. We hear Bret Hart talking about having a little reverential fear of the challenge of Yokozuna, but he's going to worry about that when he gets a little closer. Still talking about being a stand-up guy, ready to fight, ready to deal with Yokozuna when necessary, but also realizing he has other challenges ahead of him. Bam Bam Bigelow and Earthquake up next. That match is what you'd expect. Mean guy match, big guy match, and Earthquake makes his way in. Obviously, Bam Bam Bigelow means more to the area in 1993 than Earthquake does. Earthquake, I think, out by late 93, by WrestleMania 10 or soon thereafter, he's out. But, I mean, he does some basic brawling, but it's clear that they want Bigelow to get over. Bigelow actually is able to lift Earthquake for a back suplex. This is around the same time that they do the sumo match on Raw with Earthquake and Yokozuna, so Earthquake's size kind of being used against him just a little bit in terms of him looking like a lesser big man. Second back suplex by Bigelow. I've got to admit, no matter how you look at it, these are feats of strength that are pretty impressive. Earthquake goes over the top rope, flies to the floor, hits the guard rail, and I believe that leads to Bigelow. I know Bigelow wins. I think he wins here by countout. And yeah, he does. And so that's that. Kamala against Mike Starr up next. They actually eventually start promoting a Bigelow versus Kamala WrestleMania match that doesn't happen. Of course, new sword and the old shield for Kamala. Kamala now a babyface with the Reverend Slick. That doesn't last a terribly long time. Still the same offense from Kamala: punches, kicks, chops, and the like. Big splash, and the fans are teaching Kamala to turn the man over. 1, 2, 3 gets the victory. Deborah Duggan, otherwise known as Hacksaw Jim Duggan's wife, who is pregnant at the time, mentions not wanting Jim to continue fighting. She says she's seen him through neck surgery, Achilles tendon surgery, several knee surgeries, and the like. Does not like what happened with Yokozuna. Wants him to be able to play with his child, I believe a daughter, when the child is born, and doesn't want him to continue wrestling. Getting sympathy on the idea that Jim Duggan is more injured than he actually is. Obviously, he comes back to wrestle for another 20 years, at least another 7 or 8 on a national level before slowing down and then going to the independents, coming back to the WWF several times over the last several years. A match between Giant Gonzalez and The Undertaker is announced, and for WrestleMania, other matches announced for WrestleMania here. And again, we see the choke and choke slams of Gonzalez from previous weeks, dominating individuals. Crush and Doink, hyped again. They really seem to make this kind of a third from the top sort of match, which is just a little bizarre to me. Intercontinental Championship match to Tonka, who has beaten Michaels, as we mentioned in previous weeks, and they kind of re-showed that defeat and all of that. But anyway, so Tatanka and Michaels for the Intercontinental Championship. They encourage people to buy tickets, yada yada yada. And I think this is kind of when they started to make things a destination for Mania. They're trying to get people to come in internationally. I'm sure they did it in previous years, but this is the first time that I can remember. No, maybe it was WrestleMania 8 they started, but they definitely started to make, around this time, the early 90s WrestleMania a destination type thing. Undertaker in a squash match here goes on against Raven Clark. Actually, Taker hits a drop toe hold, which is really weird for an Undertaker type maneuver, but manages to hit a choke slam. Then he hits Tombstone, 1, 2, 3. Not exactly a big challenge to get ready for, Giant Gonzalez by far. Crush encourages people to donate to Headlock on Hunger for Somalia, and then the event center featuring Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, who talks about being able to take Tatanka down a few pegs, being the best Intercontinental Champion of the time, and we hear again the hype from The Undertaker that he is going to make sure that Giant Gonzalez rests in peace. We get the hype of a match between Doink and the Big Boss Man. I don't know that this is the last Boss Man match on television, but we're approaching that time. Boss Man is not on the WrestleMania 9 card that I recall, unless he's in a dark match that I don't recall. But that'll be where we close this week's Superstars. We'll be back with more right after this.